and welcome to the Last Looks podcast, a show where we catch up with talented hairstylists and makeup artists in the film and television industry. We'll pick their super creative brains and find out all the good stuff. Join me, your host, Jamie Lee, in finding out what's what in the hair and makeup departments around the world.
Now it's time for Kid Corner, where we shine a spotlight on artists who've created products with the film and television industry in mind. Products designed by artists for artists.
Hi, Marietta.
Hello, Jamie. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Now, you are a professional makeup artist and have developed a fantastic book called The Little Brown Book. Can you tell me what is The Little Brown Book and what gave you the idea to create it?
The Little Brown Book is really a comprehensive, quick reference book of terminology and titles that I think everyone working in the industry should know, or anybody who plans to have a career in this industry. It's just one of those things where after years of working and teaching in the industry, I had so many pieces of paper hanging around that I finally decided to put it all in book form and make it easy for people. I made it small enough so that you can slip it in a set bag, have a quick reference if you hear a word while you're on set and you don't know what that word means. And it's just this little glossary of all the terms and the lingo that we use in the industry.
I love it. What a brilliant idea. How did you come up with the title?
You know what? I created the book with a different title prior to this, and the title was Roll Sound, Rollin', Speed, Marker, Action. And I felt it needed a revamping. And, you know, the little black book that people talk about that has all the information. And after discussing with a girlfriend of mine, it's like, okay, it needs to be something similar to like the little black book, because the little black book holds all the secrets. And I thought, well, let's call it a little brown book. That will hold the secrets for the terminology for the industry. And then I made little small in the graphic, and I sent it to one of my former students who is also a graphic designer and a makeup artist. And she says, I've got the perfect cover for this. And she came up with how the cover should look.
That's very cool. Who do you think would benefit from the Little Brown Book?
I think anyone who plans to have a career or has a current career within the film and television, print world, retail world, anyone who's working within the beauty industry as a whole can benefit from it. You know, whether it's the little PA coming on set, not knowing any of the lingo and being thrown on there, this is a good reference tool for them. Somebody who just wants to work in the retail industry, that's a great reference tool for them. The grip, the electric, makeup, hair, wardrobe, anybody who is planning a career in beauty and entertainment can benefit from this book, because there's no comprehensive glossary out there for you to find terminology and the references and the meaning of all these things that you hear, these secret language that you hear. There's nothing that breaks that secret language down.
Well, there is now.
Yes, over the years of sitting on set, you know, literally, Jamie, I sat down and I was writing. Every time I would hear something, I would write it and then try to find out what it meant from people I was working with, because that's the only way, really.
Yeah, it's true. I wish the Little Brown Book was around when I started out. It would have been super helpful.
I know, especially coming here, right?
Yeah, it's so true. So is the book ever revised to keep up with the changing industry?
Yes, because I revised it when I changed the title and I added all the pop culture and, you know, the start paperwork and all the things that we as industry professionals need to know. So I revised it and incorporated a lot of that in there, and all the retail terms, some of the terms I picked up in Canada. And with 2020 being the way 2020 has been, I am sure I'm going to be adding COVID-19 into the next revision. So yeah, I think every couple of years, you know, especially with social media.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's constantly evolving. So adding all those things as we constantly evolve every couple of years is going to make a tremendous difference.
Absolutely. That's great. So where can you purchase the book?
You can purchase the book on one of my two websites. You can purchase it on the official film and television planner.com and vma.education. So you can purchase on either one of those two websites. And it's just $14.95. You know, it's a lot of information for just $14.95.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Marietta.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Today, I'm speaking with the amazingly talented makeup artist Lois Burwell. Lois has worked on so many incredible projects, it's actually mind-blowing. From The Princess Bride to Braveheart, The Fifth Element to Saving Private Ryan, and so many more. Join me to hear about Lois's journey into the film industry.
Pictures up.
Last looks. Rolling.
And action.
Hi Lois, welcome to the Last Looks podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. This is very exciting. I haven't done this before. It's all new.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Now, I want you to finish this sentence for me.
All right.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Lois, and when she grew up, she wanted to be...
I wanted to work in film.
There you go.
That's what I wanted to do.
That's awesome.
And that's the burning desire. And fortunately, as a child, I enjoyed makeup. I went to a local dance school, in fact, and it started off there because when we put on shows, which makes it sound sort of, but they were very local, a local town hall. It wasn't,
Yeah.
It was small beer. But when I did that, obviously we played characters. So I found myself making up myself. And this was, very early on when I was 7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
And with the theatrical makeup and then making up those in my class, whether they were dolls or, snowflakes or soldiers, whatever it happened to be.
Yeah.
So I just would do that at home and made up, obviously, the family, poor things, including my grandmother, who was very patient. But I didn't know, actually, that there was a career you could have in doing makeup.
Yeah.
Because I came from a working class family. It wasn't, it was the idea of you could become a teacher or you could, go being, my mother was a telephonist and then a seamstress and my father was a household electrician. So it wasn't as if it was laid out. There were no film connections or anything like that. And it just so happened that I wanted to explore film and started to work on student films, actually.
Okay.
Doing makeup and as well as costume in the beginning, because obviously it was, all hands to the pump. Mm. And once I was the sound man as well. I was doing sandwiches. So that was how it started. And fortunately, I seemed to have an aptitude for makeup and was asked to go and work on their films when they left film school and were doing like rock videos, basically.
Yeah.
So that's how I started off. I mean, literally, that was it. And fell on my feet, I suppose. And it was like sliding doors. There were obviously times of working in a baker's or as a waitress or in the post office to earn money to keep a roof over your head. But it just so happened that people would... Well, one connection, the biggest break came actually really with Gregory's Girl. So I was doing bits and bobs. And we were on a student film in the north of Scotland, staying in summer chalets. And this was October, so it was quite brutal.
Yeah.
And that's where I became the sound man because he went out for a packet of cigarettes and he's never been seen since.
Oh, my God.
He went home. But it was quite funny.
He's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And on the way back to London, we stopped at the Holt Pub, which is a film pub in Glasgow. And the film makers would all kind of gather there. So we stopped for a drink on the drive down.
Yeah.
And I started to, I was there with the other students and someone came up and started to talk to us and they all seemed to know each other. And then I ended up talking to one of these chaps. And in fact, it was Mike Bradford and his friend was Bill Forsyth, who was there, who I didn't speak to or have a conversation with. And a year later, it must have been a year later, that May, from the October to the May, I got a call from Paddy Higson, who was a really lovely woman who was a producer in Scotland, saying, Lois, do you want to work on a film with Bill Forsyth? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I don't know him and I'm not a member of the union. And in those days it was, you had to be a member of a union to work and you couldn't work without being a member of a union. So it was a catch-22. And she said, well, who knows? It's very busy. We might get dispensation or something. I said, but yes, but I don't know him. How does he know me? And it came from that conversation I actually had with Mike Radford, not with Bill, all that
Oh my
time
goodness,
before.
that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's how that came about. And it was great. And then obviously I started to apply to become a union member. Mm-hmm. And that took forever, just forever, knocking at the door, saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. You know, can I at least be tested to have entry? And funnily enough, when I was interviewed, it was at the same time as Draftsman's Contract came out. And it was considered for the first BAFTA Makeup Award, because BAFTA was following the Academy Awards in giving an award for makeup.
Oh, that's very cool.
It got into, like the last 6 or something, 6 or 7, something like that. And of course, that would have been, I assume, rather embarrassing for someone who wasn't a union member to be considered for nomination. So a test was offered, an interview, and then a test. And for my test, I was just a blithering, sweating. It was the height of summer. And I was just pouring buckets of perspiration from nerves. But my 2 models, one of whom was Peter Swords King, because we've worked together on
the Draftsman's contract.
And the other, the female model was Marina Sirtis, she of Star Trek.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, who were just friends at the time,
Yeah. So what did you have to do in your test?
Right, well, the test was quite interesting, and I think it was actually a good test in that you had to create a character. On the woman, you started off with a corrective makeup, but it had to be a corrective makeup that had a kind of theme to it. Say it was Vogue 1920 or something like that, So you'd have to explain what it was you were trying to do. So you had to use a bit of imagination as well. And then on the woman, again, was the aging. So that prevented you from choosing someone who fit the bill initially, because it was either end of a scale. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the man, you had to do a wound, a wax nose to create a character, and a full laid on hair beard.
Oh, wow.
So I turned Peter into Shylock. To create a character.
Oh my goodness. Please tell me you have photos of this.
I don't actually. No.
No. That would have been brilliant. So how did you learn all these techniques? Did you do any type of formal training, or was this just figuring it out and learning it on the job? And
Yeah, learning it on the job, and and working out things backwards. The one thing I've learned working with so many brilliant makeup people, all of whom, well, not all of whom, but the vast majority of whom I suspect have got more talent than I have, I've actually realised that I approach it in a different way.
Okay.
Rather than the technique being the guide, with me, it's the look that's the guide, and then I find the technique.
So you know what you're trying to achieve, and you just figure it out as you go to try and get to that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think without classical training too, it probably forces you to take that route, because you haven't been shown A, B, C, D to get to E. You know what E looks like, and you're just figuring out how to get there. So I think it's a very creative way to do it.
It's also, it can be a handicap as well. Because I never fully feel, even now, all these years later, I never fully feel, I've got that foundation. I mean, I have now, I suppose, by osmosis, as well as, training and working out and things, and work in collaboration with other makeup people. But there's always that kind of strain to it.
Right.
But then I think that strain, that tension is what actually is creative.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's harder for you to teach somebody else how to do something because of that?
Actually, no, I don't, funnily enough.
That's good.
No, I don't. I think it's because by the time I'm showing them something, I've already worked it out.
Right.
But I will always say, now look, this might not be how you were shown to do this. It might not fit you. And you have to, I think with everything, as long as it's safe, obviously. I mean, health and safety is the primary factor, obviously. And what you use, you don't use anything dangerous. Though, God knows, when I first started, everyone cleaned their brushes with carbon tetrachloride, hexane and 355 were kind of bandied about. I mean, things evolve and change. But that was the formal training then. So, things obviously, you have to have health and safety. That's the primary. But I do think that no one is a cookie cutter makeup artist. It doesn't fit well. So you have to be like Cinderella and find the shoe that fits.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense to you?
No, absolutely. I think as artists, it's just kind of how it works. You can be shown how to do something. You could even, if you wanted to, copy exactly how you've been shown for the first 2 or 3 times, but then you're going to find your own groove within that and go, I might just adjust this or that, and then you find your own way.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, there's, more than one way to do things.
Absolutely. More than one way to skin a rabbit.
Yeah. That's much nicer than skinning a cat, because that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't realise that in the UK there was a union.
Oh, God, yeah. And it was NATKY, and it was really strict. And there was a television branch, which was completely separate from the hairstyling branch, that was another separate division from the makeup artist branch, film branch.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's not currently the case, is it?
No, it went through lots of sort of transformations, and sort of everyone, got lumped together and became BEC2.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you don't have to. I mean, that really stemmed from the Thatcher idea of you don't have to be a member of a union to work.
Right.
Which, I mean, has its benefits and its shortfalls.
Yeah.
In that there are rules that people are meant to follow. But, of course, if you do take them up, I mean, it can be a bit toothless. There are no ramifications for not abiding by the rules, And that drives down, obviously, wages. It drives down health and safety to a certain degree, and the length of hours. I mean, I've definitely seen a transformation. I mean, I to be perfectly honest, and I suppose it's not really a politically correct thing to say, but if I took the daily rate that people earn now, and then you dialed it back 25 years, we earn more then than we do now.
Right. So, I think as soon as that union kind of falls apart, it's people are taken advantage of, aren't they?
Yeah. But at the same time, you don't want a union that has ridiculous ideas, which was part of the reason why the film industry started to fail in the UK, because it was, oh no, it's 6 o'clock, we're going home now. It doesn't matter whether the location is going to be lost and you have to get that extra half page or whatever it happens to be. It's like there has to be a middle path somewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. Especially if you want to get that shot. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
That must have been excruciating for people to walk away from at times. It's just like, what? No, we're just about there. No, you have to wrap. Sorry. What?
Yeah.
Ooh, don't know if you'd see that happen these days.
No. No, you wouldn't.
So you get into the union, and then what happens? Where does your path take you?
Well, funnily enough, I got into the union expecting to work, and of course what happened was I didn't work at all, because now I couldn't work on non-union things. I could only work on union, and no one knew me, and I was the outsider, and people all knew each other. It was a very small group. Mm-hmm. And, I was the one who hadn't been formally trained. I was no one's relation. And I'm not saying, oh, poor me, but it was tough, actually. Yeah. And then fortunately, what happened was that there was a British rail strike. So everyone was, desperate for anyone who could make it to help on films. And Pauline Hayes asked me to go and do 3 days in, what's the name of it? The Military Academy in the UK, famous, can't remember now. Anyway, it was in the countryside.
Okay.
So, and I didn't drive. So at that point, couldn't afford a car. But I got a lift from a friend, and made certain I just turned up there, and there were, I think, 21 makeup people and 21 hairstylists. I mean, it was a big thing on the Lords of Discipline. And I was put in the crowd room, obviously, in between George Frost and Eric Allwright, with Alan Boyle on one side, all these, names to conjure with, and the lovely Roy Ashton, who was obviously famous for the Hammer horror films. So, I was stuck with basically the older boys, because they must have thought that they keep an eye on me.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of the first morning was a bit awkward, but then I just got on and did the work because that's what I was there to do. And slowly but surely, conversations started. And by the end of the 3 days, I was sitting at the table with them having lunch. So and talking to different hairstylists and makeup artists. And then I was asked to go and do days on other people's films, which was nice. But basically, it also forced me to do my own films because I didn't have a choice,
Yeah.
And I think that was good. So I think I launched as a head of department very early in that, if you look at 99% of the credits, that's what they are.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's ideal, but that's how it was, and that's the career I've had.
It's pretty amazing. So that one job of 3 days gave you those enough contacts to kind of get you into that click, I guess.
Yeah,
really.
Yes,
That's
it did.
amazing.
It did. Yeah, and Tom Smith was very sweet. He was lovely, actually. Although he could be tricky, but he was a great makeup artist, really great. And the big thing for me, the big request, I suppose, was being asked to go and do days because someone else had dropped out and was going off to do pickups on a Bond film.
Yeah.
Me to take Christine Alsop's place while she was doing the pickups on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh, wow.
That was 1983. So for me to do that was just extraordinary because the thought of standing on a Steven Spielberg set was something that was, it was Everest to me. It was just extraordinary.
Yeah, it's what dreams are made of.
Yeah, absolutely a dream. So I just turned up and did the work. And Tom said, well, you're coming back tomorrow. And then the next day, and it went on. And all in all, I think I was there for 6 weeks.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But I'd agreed to do a film with Lindy Shaw. And it was a film that no one's ever seen, I think, called Where is Parsifal? But it had Tony Curtis, Peter Lawford, Ron Moody, Eric Estrada, who was Chips.
Yeah.
And it also had Orson Welles.
Oh, my goodness.
So the lure to me was to be on a film set with Orson Welles.
Yeah.
Because of Citizen Kane and his other work. But primarily Citizen Kane was my, number one film.
Of course.
And it's just genius. So I actually said I have to leave Indiana Jones. And it was Stephen who asked me why I was leaving. Mm-hmm. And so I said, very unfortunately now thinking back on it, I said, because I was just, so sort of taken aback and didn't know what to say. And always the truth is the best thing to say.
Yeah.
So I just said, well, the thing is, I've said I'd work on this, yes to this film, although I'm very happy here and would love to stay on for the rest of the film. But the thing is, I've got a chance to work with the greatest director ever. And that is going to be Orson Welles, just for a few days. And he went, I don't blame you. That sounds really fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think he would have taken that as a no.
So, that's
he probably would have liked to have done it.
Yeah. So that's a testimony to who he is, which is, a decent, nice bloke. So
it's awesome.
Anyway, so that's what I did.
That's very cool.
And it was amazing. And I never thought even then, at that time, I'd end up working on quite a few films with Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few.
Yeah.
What was the first, so apart from the Indiana Jones, then what was the first one that you did for him where you were designing?
Oh, when I was designing, that was Private Ryan, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. And then the list goes on from there, which is so cool.
And we've prepared a lot of films that have never been shot, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit heartbreaking at times? Just because because you can visualize things and you're starting to get excited about it and then...
Yeah, we were doing tests on Memoirs of a Geisha, so, yeah. So, yes, quite a few. And Iwo Jima, Sands of Iwo Jima, that was another one. So, yes, they were made, but not by Stephen in the end. But, yeah.
That's very cool.
And it took 9 years to get Lincoln made.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did about, 4 or 5 budgets for it.
Oh my
and initially, when we were on War of the Worlds, did a makeup test on Liam Neeson to play Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it went through a lot of incarnations.
Yeah. That's so amazing to be along for that ride to see, yeah.
And when it came together, it was the right thing. I mean, that's what I mean. You can't force things, you know.
No.
Either it comes about or it doesn't. And, you know, in our business, I think that I was once asked, I can't remember who asked me now, just as well probably, how do I feel when, you know, you go for an interview and you know there are other makeup people? What do you feel about competition? That was how the question was posed. And the thing is, I don't feel that at all. I don't actually think about anyone being in competition. There are some people who've got similar credits. They might have better credits, they might have worse, but there are those that are, you know, kind of level pegging. But the thing is, when you go in and you meet someone, either they want you or they don't. And either they want, you know, the next person, and then that's the match. That's what's meant to be. And you just have to go, well, there you go.
Yeah, I think my brain does that. I have a very quick moment at the beginning of going, oh no. And then I go, no, if this is meant to be mine, it'll be mine. And if not, then it's just not for me. But of course I can leave an interview and be like, oh my goodness, I want that. But if it doesn't happen, that's fine. You just, I think you kind of go, my brain goes through those steps.
And the reverse.
Really?
And the reverse. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I know that, not that I would ever name names or, you know, point fingers, but I mean, I've met people and I thought, woof, that's a narrow squeak. That would not be a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
You know?
I can feel out that if something is like, oh, that doesn't sound like fun to me.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to figure out that I want to be taking things that are challenging, but I'm going to have fun doing.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk into a challenging nightmare with horrible people.
Yeah, no.
I want to be able to have a laugh and, you know, work hard and get to the end of it and be like, I'm proud of that. That was fun and I'm happy with the outcome.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. But the thing is that you have to be able to afford to do that. I mean, that's the other thing, you know. Yeah. But there has to be something in it for you in the beginning or you know, when times are hard. And honestly, I mean, I worked on The Princess Bride, Highlander, all those kind of films. Yeah. And then there were 18 months where there was no work in the UK at all. Yeah. You know, there were 3 films being made. And I was making chips in the post office over Christmas time on the night shift to get some money for Christmas. Yeah. You know, so you have to be able to afford to say no, but there has to be something in it for you, whether it's you're paying the gas bill and you're settled with that, or you're working with fun people, or it's a project that you actually, you know, just gets your juices going, you know, all those things. There has to be something in it because the work's too hard otherwise and the hours are too long.
Yeah, and then why would you?
Why would you do that?
Why torture yourself?
Yeah.
So people must get pretty excited when you say that you worked on The Princess Bride, because that, I think, for quite a few people is one of their loves. They love that film. I know that I grew up with Highlander in the house. How was that working on that? Because the director had done a lot of music videos, right?
Oh, yeah. And it was hard. It was really hard, actually. And it was a good lesson to learn early on. It was 1985. And I knew that if I could finish that film, if I could actually physically get through to the end, I'd never have to prove something to myself ever again. That's how hard it was.
Oh, wow.
Let me put it this way. The first 6 weeks, there wasn't a day off.
Oh, my gosh.
The average hours were 18 hours a day.
Oh, my goodness.
We did a 22-hour night shoot on the longest day of the year.
Oh, my goodness. But did you sign up to be tortured, or did they explain that this is how it was going to be shot, or did it
just what happened? That's just what happened. And it was incredibly hard. It really was incredibly hard. So when we got to New York, I mean, and people left. I mean, people handed in their notice. You know, we had a change of head department. We had costume department, some come and go, but the gym actors and the designers stayed. But by the time we returned from New York, there was myself and the second unit first AD were the only original members of the crew.
Oh my goodness.
And I think that says it all.
Yeah, I think you need some kind of medal for that.
But years later, funnily enough, I mean, the casts were good. I mean, I love Roxanne and Clancy, and Christoph was just a sweetheart. Very fond of him. And by the time I had then worked with Russell Mulcahy on a film with Michael Caine, Sir Michael Caine, I should say, called Blue Ice, he actually apologised.
Oh, wow. I wonder what made that come about.
Which I thought was kind of extraordinary. I think it was the only, not the only time, but it was the first time a director had ever said sorry.
Wow.
Sorry, I was so horrible. Or worked everyone so hard, And I thought, well, decent bloke, there we are.
Yeah. That's all you need is an apology. It kind of makes it, I have to say, it doesn't make it completely 100% better, but oh my goodness, it would mean something. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, and then I noticed that you worked on Legend, which was also a film that I loved watching.
Yeah.
And that was Ridley Scott. He'd already done Alien and Blade Runner. So were you pretty excited to be getting onto that set?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And of course, I hadn't done any, when I say this, it's absolutely true. I hadn't done any prosthetics with prosthetic people, I'd made my own version of things at home. I hadn't, or a wax nose or whatever it happened to be, or do a life cast, but, yourself, without ruining the carpet. So that's where I learned, really, and we had a long prep time. I think we had about 6 weeks prep because it was such a huge project.
Yeah.
And Rob Bottin, all the prosthetic pieces were flew in from the States to Pinewood, and there was a delay. There was something, they got held up in customs or something wrong. So we had 6 weeks prep.
That's awesome.
In order, learning how to do things, I suppose, which was great for me. And I did Gump and then moved on to, with Nick Dubman, do Darkness. Tim Curry is Darkness.
Oh, amazing. I am a Tim Curry fan. He's pretty fabulous.
Oh, he's just wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, and he taught me something that was rather useful, actually, something I hadn't really considered, which shows you how dense I can be, in that he said, I don't think I could have got through this film if you hadn't had such nice eyes to look into.
Oh.
Which was really lovely. But for the first time, I suddenly realised that they were looking at you.
Yeah.
Rather than you're just looking at them, because that was my world.
Yeah. And because, how long was that makeup taking? It was a big makeup. So he was obviously needing to be very patient.
5.5 hours. Yeah, it was 5.5 hours. And the worst thing was that there'd been, in the test, which neither Nick nor myself had actually done on Tim Curry, there was a flaw that happened, and he had sort of burns and welts and everything. So he couldn't shoot for 3 weeks. So when we started to shoot with him, we were, dealing with someone whose skin had been injured.
Oh, so sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was unfortunate. And, we weren't in the room at the time, so no one knows what happened. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a 5.5 hour makeup, and the crew would come in. They were long hours. The crew would come in at 11 in the morning. So we'd start at 5. The crew would come in at 11, and they were meant to be doing French hours. So that would mean that you wouldn't stop for lunch. There'd be kind of like a running buffet. Right? Yeah. You eat when you can. And then you're meant to just do 10 hours and then go home. But of course, that isn't what happened, because Ridley would get inspired or want to shoot something else, or, was creative in the moment in that way. It wasn't necessarily like you were shooting the call sheet. So sometimes that crew would go home and a second camera crew would come in at, say, 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, we were starting at 5 in the morning, and it would take 2 hours to get Tim out of it.
Oh, my goodness. He must, you guys would have been exhausted, but he must have been absolutely...
shattered.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Oh, he'd be asleep. Sometimes we'd have oxygen brought to us in the morning by the unit nurse, and we'd all have a puff on the oxygen just to keep us upright. And Tim would just be sparko out in the chair. And it's the only time I've ever slept in a makeup room. I have to tell you, because you're not meant to do that at all, obviously. It's,
no.
completely illegal. But I just couldn't face going home for 3 hours. It was just ridiculous.
Oh, my goodness.
Slept on the sofa, and we'd all just, any moment we could, we were horizontal. It was tough. The Hall of Darkness was a tough shoot.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And no wonder they have rules in place for these things. But
well, I tell you what, Tim, before we worked out a way of getting the hands off, because it was kind of like a big glove.
Yeah.
But then we razored it round so it became like a pair of gloves, so he could, put his hands in or take them out because of those claws that were already on it.
Yeah.
Of course, poor soul, he could barely feed himself. He couldn't because he couldn't hold a fork easily or anything like that. So I'd be standing there with a bowl of food and have the spoon and just feeding him.
Feeding him. Oh.
And although he was meant to have shakes and things, he had all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was very well set up. We actually had a kitchen just for the actors that would do protein shakes and all those kind of things. So that was very well done. But of course he wanted, mince and rice.
Yeah.
So I was feeding him, and it was the early days of EPK and of people, shooting behind the scenes. So they were filming him. We were sort of distracted a bit by that, and he had a special chair that he could sit in because he was on stilts and all the rest of it. Anyway, so he's sitting on this chair and I'm feeding him, and suddenly I went, "Oh God!" And he went, "What is it?" So as he was taking another bite, because we were just used to it by now,
Yeah.
And I went, "You don't have your hands on." He was sitting there. We were just so tired. I hadn't realised that his gloves were off. So he could have been feeding himself. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. See, a makeup artist's job is never done. You just help however you can to keep that actor happy and alive. And
Exactly.
that's amazing. Oh, my goodness. So, I mean, working with Ridley Scott, Rob Reiner, Steven Spielberg, Paul Thomas Anderson, Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, you must just be, every time you're going onto one of these sets, you must have just been like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Never thought I'd work with this person. Yeah,
no, that's exactly right. And, Bertolucci, that was fabulous as well. Yeah. So, yes, you do. But the thing is, it's the work that unites you. So, yes, I get a little bit, sort of... Actually, I tell you, when I was last starstruck, it was... Oh, gosh, now his name's gone. It's come back to me. Okay. So, I tell you, when I was last stage struck, really completely, and it was at, not this year, but the year before, Academy Awards, and suddenly the person sitting next to me was John Lewis.
I'm going to be really bad and say I don't know who John Lewis is.
He's a politician. He was a civil rights activist.
Oh, okay. Wow.
The real deal. And he was sitting next to me, and I got to speak to him.
That's amazing.
And I just thought that was just fabulous. But, yeah, I mean, in the beginning you do, but then the work... It's about the work. It's always about the work. So then, you've got a human being in front of you that cares passionately about something, and you're hopefully there to give the director his vision. And if he hasn't got one, provide one from a makeup perspective. That's the job.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So at what point did you make your move to the USA?
Oh, well, I've worked over here every now and then.
Yeah.
But it was about being in the same continent as my boyfriend, who then became my husband. And we've now been married for 22 years, I think. Yeah.
That makes sense then.
Yeah. So that's finally what did it. Obviously, he's a filmmaker too, and we met on Braveheart.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he was the cinematographer on Braveheart.
That's very cool. And that was your Oscar win, wasn't it, for Braveheart?
Yeah, and he won as well.
Oh man, that's amazing.
I know, isn't that bizarre? Well, when we got together on Braveheart, it was sort of like a slow burn. It wasn't a whoosh. It was. And it was a tough film too. But we go to rushes every night, And when you start off and you're going to rushes, dailies every evening, the enthusiasm's there in the beginning. And obviously as the hours get longer and people get tired, the group that go to dailies becomes smaller and smaller. So there'd be like four of us, the editor, John, myself and Mel. Yeah. So, and occasionally the producers, or more often than not, they were there, I suppose. But that was the group. So, of course, that's when we spoke to each other, because I'm not being chatty with the cinematographer while you're standing on a film set.
Yeah, no.
So that's where we sort of started to think, oh, you're quite nice, actually, for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So where was that shot?
Well, we started off prep at Shepperton, and then it was going to be shot in Scotland, but then we withdrew from Scotland after about 5 weeks, I think it was there, and went to Ireland because the tax incentive made sense. So most of it was shot in Ireland.
Okay.
Southern Ireland, yeah.
And when you say that was a hard shoot, was that just because of being out? Was it the locations and the hours and just being out in the elements? And yeah.
I mean, I think you can see, I mean, definitely the weather was one of the characters, because when you look at the film, it really does set the tone.
Yeah.
And that torrential, pouring, unforgivable rain and up to your knees in mud, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
And there was one day on the Curragh where everyone was frozen, and you can see it, and it works brilliantly in the film.
That's amazing. So what kind of effect do you think on your career winning the Oscar had? Did you feel a shift after that, or it was just business as usual?
Well, it's a really good question. I wish I had a sort of something rather fantastic and marvellous, insightful to say. But the truth is, I don't actually know, because it was such an odd time in that before I'd made the move to here, you see, and sat the test here to get into the union.
Yeah.
Francis asked me to do Rainmaker when it was non-union, and then it turned union.
Oh, brilliant.
So that's how that came about. And then I sat the test to, head department.
Yeah.
And so I can't actually say. It was just sort of one step in front of the other. There's a part of me that makes me think that when you do win an Academy Award, it can actually be off-putting to some people.
I have heard that.
Because they think you're going to be grand, or they think they can't afford you.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines, which I find rather peculiar.
Yeah, I have heard that it was, even actors have felt that way, that it's people will say, oh no, they're Academy Award winner, they're not going to want to work on my film.
Yeah, and of course the truth is that you want to work on, I mean, I don't mind working on low budget films.
Yeah.
I want to work on a film that's exciting and fun.
Yeah.
And you can be your work and you, hopefully, but it doesn't matter whether you individually are, but your work is appreciated.
Yeah.
And you get that sense of camaraderie. I mean, I look back and that's what drives it. That's what's the engine. It's not necessarily doing a big film or something prestigious or supposedly prestigious. It's what fits, what works.
Yeah. I even had that attitude when I moved over from New Zealand. I was getting that response. I arrived in Los Angeles. I was not in the union. I was needing to get my days and go through all of what you need to do. And I was coming up against going in for interviews or going for jobs, and they would look at my resume. And because I'd been lucky enough to work on big films in New Zealand, they were just like, oh no, she's worked on that. Why do you want to work on this film? And it's just like, well, pretty much starting again.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say that, but it was just like, I mean, most of the time it was something that I was going for that sounded fun. And It was just like, well, I need to meet people and I want to work on stuff. I just want to be working. Don't let that put you off.
Exactly.
It's a funny reaction, I think, to have.
Yes, a perception. It's a perception of something that's other, but you're still you. You're still
Yeah. So that's a pretty amazing whirlwind to go through, though. You meeting your husband-to-be and working on an amazing film, and then you guys get to go to the Oscars together and you both win. So that party night must have been pretty amazing.
Oh, it was great. Yes, it was great. And I couldn't sit with John. The other thing was that I was shooting Fifth Element at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
Basically was putting on, the eyelashes and the freckles on the air stewardesses for Floston.
Yeah.
As the car was coming to collect me to fly me over on the Friday for the Oscars that were on the Sunday.
Oh, my goodness.
Or was it on the Monday? Can't remember now.
Where was the Fifth Element shooting?
Pinewood.
Oh, so in England. So, oh my goodness, you were really having to fly. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So that was between the jet lag and the excitement, and also the exhaustion of doing Fifth Element, And I had to fly back and walk straight into the 300 extras for Floston.
Oh my God.
Get off the plane, go straight there. Yeah.
So you must have had a good team behind you then, I'm imagining.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're only as good as the people you're with, yeah.
So what do you look for when you're putting a team together for jobs?
Well, sometimes, you get someone who doesn't fit, or you don't fit them, or they have a different idea, or, they're who you think they are and who they are when they're working are two different things,
Right.
So I've occasionally had that. But then when you find a team that you like, you can have a laugh with, but are really good and in some ways are better than you in certain areas, that's what you look for. You look for someone who's better than you are in your weak spots. That's what you look for.
No, it's true.
Because it serves the film and it serves the department and it serves that makeup artist as well.
Yeah.
Because then they can shine at something. So that's what I look for. And decent people, honest people.
Yeah, I think so. When you're working those hours and everything, you need to, got to be surrounded by good people.
Absolutely. And I like people who aren't pretentious, I mean, that's also very important to me. I don't want waffle, and I don't want, I don't want endless explanations. I just want the work done.
Yeah.
And an honest person. That's it.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's just no room or time for it. It's just like, there's no time for this. Just let's get on with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. So shooting, I mean, you must have shot in some pretty amazing locations around the world.
Yes, one of my all-time favourites is your home, actually, in New Zealand.
Oh, really? Oh, for Last Samurai, was it?
Last Samurai, yeah.
Ah, amazing.
Yeah, New Plymouth. It was just fantastic. It was really great.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear.
I just loved it. Yeah, absolutely. And New Zealand is so beautiful. And the people just are so open. They give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Here's this film crew, some people I had a really mixed department on that, actually.
Yeah.
So people came from everywhere because there were, New Zealand was busy. So we had makeup people from Local 706 in LA, the UK, Ireland, Australia.
Oh, wow.
So it was a very mixed department and it was great. Good group.
Because, I mean, you had some big background scenes and everything in that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And it was, this tiny town was suddenly swamped by not only Hollywood, but also, 500, 550, I think it was at the height, Japanese young men.
Oh, wow.
Which was really bizarre. And on the Saturday, there was only half-day opening. It was half-day closing on a Saturday for the shop.
Yeah.
And, of course, you get out as soon as you can to get your provisions for the week. So we'd come out of this rather small supermarket and there'd be, a shoal of 10 Japanese samurai. Really. So and in their civvies, of course. But then they would come along and they'd recognise you, obviously, and everyone bowed. And of course, that was rather odd to see the locals actually go from, did you see that?
Yeah.
My eyes, those 10 young men all bowed to these two people. From that kind of shock to by week 8, it was like, oh, hello, and everyone was bowing to each other.
Just completely normal. That's awesome.
It's great.
So the shops, at no point did they decide, we should open for a full day on a Saturday. No, they just stuck with their half.
Yeah.
Of course they did.
Yeah. So there was one fish and chip shop that then was doing fish and chips and sushi.
Oh my goodness. Must have been the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I tell you, I miss a good fish and chip shop.
Oh, yeah.
So in all your locations as well, which one did you find the most challenging?
Oh, that's a tough one. I might have to put the thinking cap on for that. Well, actually, to be perfectly honest, I'm not good at sea. So on boats that bob about.
That makes sense.
So I think bob about boats would be the one that makes me go, oh, no, really, do I have to? Yeah.
Yeah. I normally have to take something and then worry that it's going to make me sleepy or that type of thing on top of dealing with being, on a floating bobby. Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah, they're the ones. I mean, actually, I suppose it's hard to say what's tough. I mean, normally things at sea are tough.
Yeah.
And beaches. Anything on a beach, especially when, because sand and makeup aren't friends to each other.
No.
And it gets everywhere. And it's just a huge royal pain in the arse.
Yeah. That's true. I feel like too, by the end of a day, walking on sand and standing on it, oh my God, it's exhausting.
Well, on Ryan, you know, we also had the extra thrill of you had to walk half a mile along the beach, but to get down to it, there were 98 steps down the cliff face with all your equipment in a dry suit so you could run in and out of the sea. and you know, you got all the prosthetics and the peddler and all those things for the blood effects. I mean, my God. Anyway, by the end of those 3 weeks, we had bottom muscles like you can't believe. We were fit.
We had buns of steel.
we could have cracked walnuts.
That's awesome. But, once you'd get down those stairs, it'd be like, I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I'm not going back up there until it's time to wrap.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. And dealing with all the blood with the sand. That's amazing. So throughout your career, what do you feel have been like some really noticeable changes in the film industry?
Well, one of the most obvious ones actually are the amount of women who are heads of department on films now.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Because when I began, that was not the case.
Right.
It was always the makeup man.
Okay.
So, well, not always, that's not fair, but, 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a change. And the amount of diversity on film crews has increased, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah, that's good.
But the hours have got longer.
Well, they've gotten longer?
Oh, yeah.
That's not what I want to hear.
Yeah, no, the hours have got longer.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually, there's something, and I'll tell you the other thing I've noticed, and I know this is really politically incorrect, but I'm going to say it anyway. I tell you what has actually expanded in the most extraordinary way, and it's the production office.
Right.
The amount of people in a production office, I would say, has tripled or quadrupled.
Yeah. Because
I remember large films, being done with far fewer people.
Yeah.
And sometimes there'd just be, the coordinator, singular, not multiple.
Yeah.
So I would say the production office has expanded beyond all recognition, and the makeup department seems to be decreasing.
Yep, I would. Yeah, I worked on a film recently that was out of state, and we were having to kind of fight. Not myself so much. I hired locally. I was comfortable with hiring locally. I found some great people, but the makeup department was having trouble, and so she wanted to bring at least her key in from somewhere else.
Right.
And the fight that she had to go through was quite extraordinary. And she kept saying to me, she's just like, they keep flying in these PAs. Yep, I don't understand. She's like, the production office is fully from out of town. She's like, I don't understand why production are allowed to bring in all the PAs, but I'm having to fight like anything to bring in a skilled makeup art. Like she was needing someone who could specifically do, had skills in certain areas.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was very confusing to both of us. So maybe that goes along the lines of what you're saying as well, I think. It's very interesting.
Seems to be, what I'm really basically saying, which is the politically incorrect thing to say, is there seems to be this false belief that the film is made in a production office, where in actual fact it's made wherever it happens to be that the director, the actors, and those supporting it gather.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this new... I mean, I just there's a question mark. I don't know whether it's because it's become more a business.
Maybe.
But it always was a business. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Who knows? I guess, if you can lighten your load, you're going to, aren't you, and spread it out over more people, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could do that, we probably would too, but they're not letting us.
Oh, no. I actually, to be perfectly truthful, I think it's always good if people are busy enough that there's, a sufficient amount so you're not frenzied and things fall through the cracks because you're either too tired or there's just too much, you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I do like it to be quite tight because then idle hands aren't good.
No.
That's when you get that kind of, conversations or gossip or whatever it is, or someone sitting there looking at a magazine, which of course they just want to set fire to. So, all those kind of things.
Yeah. There's nothing worse, I think, than actually feeling bored on a film set.
Oh, no, it's dreadful. Like you're watching paint dry.
Yeah.
It's absolutely torturous.
No. And I think too that, like, as you were saying earlier, that when you do have the luxury of kind of reasonably picking and choosing what you want to do, you are going to choose the film that is going to keep you stimulated and moving and challenged. And because if it's boring, or slow, or you're just going to be like, oh, especially if you're, doing 18 hours of that and you're like, oh my goodness, you're just watching the clock.
Yeah. No, that's horrible. We've all had that on the odd occasion.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.
Yes.
You're the first vice president?
Correct.
What does that mean? And what does the job entail? Because I have no idea.
Well, it's all voluntary.
Okay.
That's the first thing. So none of the staff gets paid, but all the governors, it's all voluntary. So I was elected as the makeup and hairstyling branch governor. Mm-hmm. And then as a governor, there are three of us, one hairstylist and two makeup people to represent the proportions of the membership of the branch.
Okay.
And what happens is it's a 3-year term and you sit on various committees. You obviously are there for the governance of the academy. So you're looking at the finances, and there's a finance committee, there's an awards committee, there's outreach and education, and there's history and preservation.
Okay.
So each of those currently have a vice president who heads those committees. Mm-hmm. And the board of governors elects the officers annually. So the year when John Bailey was voted in as president, I got voted in as first vice president, which means that, just like with everything else, if John couldn't do something, an event or whatever, then I would be expected to be the understudy. It's like being an understudy. But my purview is to oversee the awards and events committee.
Okay.
And they keep electing me to that place.
So you must be doing something right then.
So I've fooled them all. Yeah, no, I don't. It's a great honour and it's fascinating. I absolutely love it, to be perfectly honest. I really do.
That's awesome. I was going to ask, how did you begin on that path of going in that direction?
Well, just out of interest, actually.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't really a burning ambition. I mean, I've never really been that way. It's just, that's really interesting. And then you have conversations about it. And I think that if you're a member of a club, I mean, what it actually comes down to is this. If you're a member of something and you feel that either some change is needed or you want to find out how it really works or, want to contribute in some way, then you need to be active within it.
Yeah.
And what you can't do is moan about something and just stand on the outside.
Right.
Of it. If you want something changed or opened up or feel that there is something that you'd like to explore, then you need to be involved in it. So that's how it came about, simply. I mean, I started with the executive committee of the branch and was on that for, years. I mean, I think, 15 years or something, with a year off in between.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a natural progression. But of course, there's nothing to say you'd be voted in. I mean, if people don't like you or don't think you're good at it, then they wouldn't vote for you, one assumes.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It is cool. It's extraordinary. It's a very different perspective because obviously I suppose my main loyalty is to the branch, obviously. But when you're a governor, it's to the branch and all the other branches as well.
Right.
And particularly when you're an officer. So sometimes there might be something that would be beneficial for the makeup and hairstyling branch per se, but in actual fact, it would not be in the academy as a whole, all the branches' interest or benefit.
Right.
So then you would have to choose the academy over your own branch.
Right. That must be tricky at times.
Yeah, because that can be tricky. I mean, fortunately, I haven't actually been in that position, so it's good. But yes, I mean, that theoretically is what you should do. It's kind of like, working out the balance, working out the middle path.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if it is beneficial for 99% of the academy members, then that will fold in X amount of makeup artists and hairstylists as well.
That's awesome. Hey, now I wanted to ask you too, Lois, who would you like to hear on the podcast?
I know, I was thinking about that. And I don't want to say. I mean, I know that's awful because there's so many people I like. And
that's understandable though.
I can't put them in order. And more than that, someone would be upset, and I just don't want anyone upset.
That can be your answer, Lois. I don't want to pressure you. That's totally fine.
All right, good. Thank you very much. I tell you who I would have loved to have heard from. I mean, I would love to have heard from Dick Smith, Tom Smith, Roy Ashton, all those that have gone before. If I could have a choice, I'd want to hear their voices. So I think it's very important work that you're doing because, somewhere in the future, God knows, there might be someone out there who go, I'd really want to hear, Lois Burwell and Peter Swords King.
That's cool. I think so too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think it's important.
It is. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lois. What a pleasure to chat with you.
Well, all I'll say is you're doing magnificent work, and it's been my absolute joy and pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you, Lois. For links to see more of Lois's work, go to the episode notes page on our website, www.thelastlookspodcast.com. The Last Looks podcast would like to thank Brett Stanley and Sabrina Castro. The song Fun Time by DJ Quads. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
That's a wrap, people.